Do you ever find yourself speaking in the same accent as the person that you're talking to? This is something that used to happen to my sister very often. My sister has ADHD. She's also an actor. But when she was a kid, when she came home, we could tell who she'd been with during that day because her accent would have changed completely. And this is kind of quite a common thing, and there's some research into that. So today I'm going to look at a particular concept within the research, just kind of brief overview of why this might be that we pick up other people's accents. And if you're one of those people, you might be like, makes sense. But first, if you don't know me, I'm Alex. I'm a voice coach. I'm also I'm doing neurodivergent masking research, specifically around the voice. So I'm interested in this topic because it's something that shows up quite often. Either neurodivergent people have like a totally different accent sometimes than the one that they've grown up in, or they have this tendency to absorb other people's accents, which I've always been very interested in, but not really known why. So if you're interested in voice, if you're interested in any of those topics, subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell icon. I'm not even sure whether the bell icon exists anymore. I've not even looked, but wave a bell at someone, and let's dive in. So we're going to start off, and we're going to look at this this particular research paper. So today we're going deep in the research, and it's called Vocal Accommodation and Mimicry, as you can see, by Bernhold and Giles. And it's looking at people who are outside of some area and how they've come in. So like, for people who are foreign. And we're going to look at just some bits that come up in it as to why this might be that we sort of kind of take on other people's accents. So it says here that interlocutors, people who come in from the outside, routinely adjust their communication in response to their interaction partners. You change how you talk based on who you're talking to. And we all do this. You don't need to be from outside a place. And there is a theory that I've just come across, which is Communication Accommodation Theory. And this came around in about the early 1970s. And it's this idea of we actually change, we accommodate others with our communication. And it has these kind of really quite strong benefits from an evolutionary perspective. So there is some research that shows that this also shows up in different like monkeys and apes. That maybe you've got monkeys from one tribe, and I'll say apes because I'm not sure whether it goes to monkeys, but we've got apes from one group of apes, and then there's another lot here. They will change how they speak. They'll change their accent basically in order to be able to differentiate each other with people, with groups. Are apes people? I think so. The other apes who are not part of their pack, basically. So there's this difference of like, are you one of us? And this is sort of this accommodation theory that came up. So let's say, what on earth is it to accommodate? So accommodation, it says, includes the production of behaviours similar or identical to the individual interaction partner's behaviours. Most notably convergence. So I'll talk about convergence in a second, but it sort of means moving together. So you'll act or you'll speak similarly or in exactly the same way to the person you're talking to. As well as for the production of other situationally appropriate behaviours, vocalizing. You'll use the same noises to signal affiliation and understanding when the interaction partner is speaking. We pick up on other people's mannerisms and tones as well, but not just these things. So there's two functions that this particular paper says as to why we need accommodation, or why we use these accommodation kind of behaviors, why we change ourselves basically. It can decrease social distance between people. So you're someone from one area, there's another person from another area, you come together, you're different, you're from different, I don't know, countries maybe, and it kind of reduces that social distance, and it also facilitates comprehension or communication. So you're able to kind of talk on some similar level. And this is like the positive benefit, it brings people together, basically. Copying people brings people together. That's a sort of a simple way of looking at that. Now let's look at it from how it comes from the person who is speaking, and how it comes from the person who is listening to that person. So from the speaker's perspective, it says accommodation often manifests as convergence. So we get closer together, we feel closer together. And this is great, except when it goes wrong, which I'll talk about in a second. You'll you'll become more communicatively similar to the listener and attempt to decrease social function or facilitate comprehension. And here is a nice little list of things you can change, and they're all related to the voice, of course. There's dialects, so this is what I was talking about. You might change your dialect or your accent. Your rate of speech, if someone is speaking slowly, you'll get slower if you're kind of tuned in with them. Their volume, pausing, and indeed language. You know, I speak Spanish. If someone's speaking Spanish, I might switch into Spanish. So this is what you would do as a speaker. You change these things. And from a listener's perspective, it says accommodative communication refers to the perceptions that the speaker has adequately adjusted their message to meet the recipient's needs and preferences. And this is where it can break down. Listeners will be generally more favourable when they believe speakers want to help them. So you change the way you talk in order to be able to show that you want to communicate well. So let's put a little sidebar here that's not in this research, but it's about neurodivergent masking. What if that person is working as hard as they can to make those changes and still can't do it? Like they lack the skill or their brain just like you try really hard and you get it wrong. Because one of the things that I think this paper, or maybe another one, talks about is it can go either way. You have to get it just right. You can't if you change how you speak not enough, then you're perceived as like this is non-accommodation. You're perceived as like thinking just for yourself, and you're not trying to accommodate the other person. If you change too much, and this is what happens if you change your accent completely, it can be seen as patronizing, or it can be seen as you're making fun of them, which is what can happen if you're someone who kind of naturally takes on other people's accents. They can think that you're making fun of their accent, and you're not. We're all just trying to get this sweet spot of communication accommodation, but it's difficult. And for some people, neurodivergent people in particular, but not just that, it's impossible to tell where's the right level for that particular person that you're talking to. And people who don't have these struggles, they do it automatically. Their brain does it automatically because it's an evolutionary thing. As I say, there's it shows up in apes. So people don't know that they do this, they just do it. And then those people who don't, like, you know, I've got autistic traits. Like if I'm my autistic parts, like I have to do all these things consciously. And so if I'm trying to work out what's the right level of copying, basically, I'm probably going to get it wrong because other people are doing it naturally. So this is the sort of dark side of these things of like, what if you don't have this skill? And there's a good example here. And given we're on YouTube, we'll take this example. It talks about the fact that there was one study where bilingual participants, so I'm bilingual, I go onto a video, perceive people who posted negative comments on YouTube as greater experts when their comments appear in the same language as the video. So for example, if I see a video in Spanish and I were to post a negative comment, I never do that, but if I did, then like a Spanish reader or some other reader would think that I was more of an expert by posting in Spanish than if I was posting in English, even though that doesn't really say anything about that. That just means it was just happens that I speak that language. But this is the sort of thing, that kind of judgments that we kind of make about that. So non-accommodation, this is when you're not changing enough, or you're changing too much. This is talking about cognitive function, we don't need to think about that, but it often leads to miscommunication and inefficient communication. And indeed, this is what we see as with like neurodivergent masking, is you try, like people trying and burning themselves out and still failing to communicate well, and it's inefficient in many different ways. So in terms of non-accommodation, when you're talking, it shows up as divergence. You know, you're becoming more different to the listener. Or, and this is the thing that is, I think, important when you're trying to be sort of close to yourself. You're trying to, you're trying to be authentic, for want of a better word. Maintenance. You're taking care of yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that, I think. But it does have this effect of kind of alienating other people, because you're kind of not playing that game. You're going, I'm talking in this way. This is the way that I talk. This is the way that I communicate. And for other people, they're like, well, you're not playing that game. But but it is necessary in order to stop burning yourself out. So that, I mean, that's a kind of quick look into just one aspect of this paper, which is about accommodation and what it is. I think it's very interesting. I'll keep like digging into this particular topic and probably put other things as well. But if you come home and or from having talked to someone and you find that you're talking in their accent, recognize like it's not something to be ashamed of. I think often people do feel ashamed. It's not. It's a sign that you're like following this evolutionary sort of need to try and make communication good for the other person. So yeah, that was it. That was very research heavy and a bit scrappy. It's the first time I've done one with little clips from a research paper. That will get better at that. If you're interested in voice and everything else, then subscribe, hit the like button, follow me on social media, and that is all for today. Enjoy.